Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today to our webinar with the Royal College about using film to help in mental health. A few housekeeping rules before we begin. Obviously, thank you so much for coming today. We've got an astounding 844 people that have signed up, which is so lovely. If you want to ask any questions, and I really do ask you, please do pepper questions, especially to the creatives. They love answering about their work. Please pop it in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen to submit, and we will have 20 minutes at the end at 40 minutes past to answer your questions. If you would like to tweet the Royal College, please use hashtag RCPsychLive, or also directly tag them at RCPsych. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available to watch on the college website from next week. Any certificates for attendees will be given in the next week. So I shall begin. I'm Dr. Pavender Shagal. I'm a psychiatrist in CNWL NHS Trust. Have been for a number of years now, but I also have another career in filmmaking, and I have my own production company, Pavender Productions, which I've been working professionally in the industry, I'd say, for about 3 years. The structure for today is I'm going to talk a bit about my career and why I think it's really important to use film, particularly with filmmakers in mental health. And then I will bring on three. Someone's saying they can't hear me. Is that the case with everyone? You can hear me. Okay. Thank you. And then I will have 3 guest speakers coming on every 10 minutes that I've personally worked with professionally in film, and I'm quite excited about that. So I'll introduce them all individually when we get to them. So a lot of people ask, how did I get into this career? I've always wanted to work in film since I was a little girl, but the film industry is not as modern as one would like, being a brown woman. And I always liked science and academia, and I wanted to do medicine. So I thought I'd get my career going in medicine and then try and do it parallel. So I did philosophy and then medicine, did my training in London, and I thought initially I wanted to do obstetrics, and luckily did not go down that path and found my love and passion for mental health when I was an F2 junior doctor. And then started the training program here in the NHS with the Royal College. And then after CT3, I took a year out to have a little break, and I started professionally writing. So I wrote from anything to do with mental health poetry to articles in mental health, about race discrimination, worked with BBC a few times and ITV about that with my writing. And then I found 2 individuals who had been suffering with mental health, and we started a podcast together. And I thought, how brilliant is that? You know, a clinician and 2 individuals who are suffering with mental health, and we working together in a partnership creatively. And that's when I started my pseudonym, The Secret Psychiatrist, and some people call me The Secret Psych. So we started this podcast together. It went really far. We went to Parliament and recorded with MPs. We went to the Royal College in a conference and won lots of different magazines. That's where I met actually Mark, who I'll be talking to later. And that was a really eye-opening experience on how we can work with individuals with mental health without the formal sort of a leaflet coming in to see someone or a doctor, and give advice via podcast. And then I went back into training as a registrar, and then I went to acting school after work. So I would go to part-time acting school, and I realized that the film industry in particular had not changed one bit since I was a little girl. You know, the experiences for women and those of color is still quite small. And so in 2019, at the end of it, I decided to write my own play, and just to kind of get a start on how the industry works. So I wrote a play, and it was a dark comedy about the NHS. You know, we were going through Brexit at the time, and I had LGBT themes in there, about psychosis as well. And that was really great. I directed, wrote, produced, and starred in it, and it was all female cast. And then obviously the pandemic hit in 2020, and so theatre was shut down, and I wanted to take that play to a bigger stage. And then I decided to move on to film. So I did my first comedy sketch, and it was about falling in love in the pandemic, called Love Bug, and that got to air on BBC Upload, which was a platform with BBC, which was great. And again, I just wanted to experience, what does what do you do in film? And that was a really good experience. I produced, wrote, and starred in it. And then I started working with other filmmakers. So I moved on to Phantoms, which is about pseudocyesis, about phantom pregnancy, essentially. And we had an all-female cast of color. And I thought, right, this is what I want to do. I want to educate audiences that watch film, which is everybody, about mental health. So I thought, okay, everybody in this time of the pandemic is binge watching. You know, everyone's using TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Everyone's getting their information online, especially children. You know, children go to school, they have an iPad, they have a phone nowadays. So how do we bring mental health awareness to them at home in an informal manner? And that's what we did with Phantom. So, you know, you're making a film, you're not even realizing, you know, it's about mental health, really, if you look at it. And then you're passively taking in information about mental health, the signs, the symptoms, the awareness, you know. And my aim is children and those watching will be able to think, okay, those are the signs of depression. I need help, or someone needs help. And long term, hopefully it will ease the crisis and the pressure on mental health services, which we know are more demanding as the years go by. So that's when I started working with filmmakers. And then I moved on to a psychological thriller that went on Amazon. I worked with Mark, which I'll talk about later as well, and my colleagues that are coming on today. And I really do think clinicians, we are natural directors, producers, writers, performers. And I simplify it, but actually, what do? We learn a bunch of things in a textbook and we regurgitate it in a role play every single day. We have to communicate with a team. We have to lead exactly what you do on a film set. And what interests me in Hollywood, you know, they might, if you're lucky, have a first aider, but they don't have a mental health aider. And they tend to fantasize mental health in films. And as we know, that's not the real life issue of what we deal with day to day, especially in services. So I wanted to normalize the taboo of mental health on the screen, but have lead roles of color, because as we know, it's still a huge stigma in ethnic communities, and as well as giving opportunity to women, those with mental health, that inclusivity if you have disability, and on my film sets. So these are just a couple of the pictures here. On the left, we have Phantoms on the set, ITV below, which was recently on the film Core, which has been getting a lot of traction at the moment. We were just with Channel 4 recently and have had over 30 BBC interviews. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment, which I'm really excited about. And that's what I'm doing in parallel with working mental health. But I think we're very similar to filmmakers. And I think psychiatry and mental health, as we know, the arts go so well with mental health and they complement each other. And I think we're natural creatives in mental health, but we don't get the chance and opportunity due to the stress of the workload to incorporate it at work. But there are little things we can do. So I have done writing groups, drama groups, art groups with my patients at work. Last year, I did a documentary with my patients as the cast and the staff as the crew, which was fantastic, that we did in CNWL. So there are things we can incorporate and actually join forces. But I think starting that communication with filmmakers directly, how we create work together so they can work with us and we can work with them, I think I have found it really to be successful. And I think there's a need for that and interest. Technology is not going anywhere. Why don't we just get on board? I think, as I said, gone are the days we can expect people, you know, to come in and get a leaflet. We have to be realistic. Social media is booming. We should boom with it. So that brings on to my first guest, Mark, if we can go to the slide. So I met Mark, ironically, on Twitter about 2 years ago, and he's been doing absolutely fantastic work, as you can see on his bio on the webinar. He had suffered with his own mental health and has been incredibly brave actually talking about it openly, especially about father's mental health. And he wrote a book, Daddy Blues, as well as many other things he's been doing. And so we got into contact. You know, I'm a big supporter of those who are very public about their mental health and would like support creatively. And we decided, let's turn it into a film. And that's what we did. We made a small feature and it's on Amazon. And so I'd like to show you the trailer.
Nearly 5 years. It's a man's job to be the breadwinner.
The man's job.
It has affected me, being like that. Hurt my
mental health. Is it? Who says that?
I don't know, society, I guess.
Men are to be conditioned not to show emotions. Remember, you have to be honest. Otherwise, it will be harder to recover. Depression isn't selective. It doesn't pick and choose who it wants. Mental illness is never that straightforward.
What makes some people good dads?
Great. So I'd like to invite Mark. While Mark joins on, Daddy Blues was actually made during the pandemic, so we had a lot of issues making that film, but again, film is always possible.
Hi guys, you okay?
Hi, Mark.
My camera should be working. I have pressed the button, but for some reason my camera's not been working properly today for some reason.
Don't worry, don't worry. While that tries to fix itself, maybe we can continue while you're speaking because we can hear you perfectly. So Mark, you've been so open about sort of your own concerns with mental health, especially towards Daddy Blues. I would love to hear from you what it was like. Oh, there you are. Perfect. What it was like for you turning something that was so difficult and challenging creatively in creating Daddy Blues, the book.
Yeah. My journey started obviously 18 years ago, and witnessing my wife go for a traumatic birth, and obviously myself suffering from my mental health, during the first year of fatherhood as well. And when I wrote the book, it was really about sharing my own personal experience, honestly, as well, because I wasn't really honest for years until I had a breakdown years later, really. So I suffered, didn't tell my wife how I was feeling, didn't tell anyone, family members. And, it just went on and on, really, until I had a breakdown and I was in community mental health team. So sharing my experience, first of all, on social media and obviously in the media, you can imagine 13 years ago, fathers with postnatal depression, you can imagine the stigma then as well, and PTSD, birth trauma, witnessing a traumatic birth, etc. But I think the film actually has really highlighted the importance of father's mental health because it impacts on mum's mental health. It can impact on child's development. My work, as you know, Pavender, is not just about dad. It's really educating people that anyone can suffer, any parent can suffer during this time.
And how did you find, obviously you don't have to be overly nice because I'm here, but how did you find working with me as an NHS doctor and creating Daddy Blues into a film? What was that process like for you? I'd love
Pavender,
to hear
you're a star. It's so humbly, honestly, and even you in your bio, you haven't told me half the things you've done already. So I think, like you said, it was a challenge first of all, because obviously we had to get a sponsor. And I think the limited resources we had, actually, you did it all voluntary, all the actors, it was during COVID as well. And to put a film out during those stressful times as well, it's been absolutely amazing. And obviously the feedback, we've done premieres, we've had a bit of press on BBC, etc. And that's really opened up a conversation with other fathers to open up with their mental health, because so this film has really, really highlighted massively, and it's helped so many fathers even get comments even today, not today, obviously, over the last couple of weeks, they've just seen the film and on Amazon Prime. So it's something, it's a legacy in it as well, it's the first film ever really has been actually expressing, telling a story about dads who are going through mental health struggles during becoming a new dad as well.
And how do you, because you've obviously, you're such a creative yourself, for you, how is that process? And do you think that's important to be creative in this way to kind of express how you're feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was diagnosed with ADHD at 40, and I think, art and, I was brought up in the 80s, valleys, very man up, get on with this sort of thick culture where I'm from. And art wasn't really, I couldn't keep still in school, so art was not being created. But what I realized, self-taught maybe, that when I hyper-focus on something, you could do anything with the help with others. I do need a help to write a book, or I do need to help, to do things with yourself, Pavender, as well. And that really helps, that's why I work with other professional doctors and professors. I know what I know and learn off parents who I support now, and we put it down in writing on our film as well, sort of thing. So it's really, I think arts and creative should be really up there with maths and English as well, I believe, as well, because there's a lot of creative people. You can get good self-esteem from the arts as well, and filming as well. And it's a lot of creative people with ADHD or neurodiversity, as I say, as well.
Fantastic. And with Daddy Blues, what we really try to do in the film, because I wanted to honor your book, and it was so beautifully written, and it's a lovely read if anyone gets a chance. You were so candid about yourself and your wife and the struggles you went through. I really, really loved that. And I really wanted to bring in the film those two men. So we have a male doctor and basically you in the film that we're having with an actor, have that conversation. And I wanted to hear from you, how important do you think it is to see on the screen as a man, a man opening up to someone else about mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. I never talked about it for years. It was just a conversation at gym after going for community mental health teams. And I think, back then, 13 years ago, it was really weren't as talked about as it was in the last 5-6 years, I'd say. So I think now, with all the work you've done, the films and everything, podcasts, you're right. I think it's definitely the way forward. I like listening to podcasts. I like listening to films. I take that in better than reading sometimes. And it's all about learning. I'm a very kinesthetic learner as well. And we got to really be more person-centered with people with dyslexia and other disorders as well. So it's very important. The film is definitely up there as well, massively.
And you've touched on a really important point about, you obviously listen to podcasts, and that's one of my points, is we need to be doing more creatively. How do you feel we should be working really as mental health professionals? Obviously, you've done the books, you've done the podcast, we've done the film. Is there anything we should be using, media outlets, that you think that would be really helpful?
I think especially like more smaller chunk videos is good. I think especially myself, if I'm not interested in something, I just switch off, for instance. The good thing about mental health and positive psychology, I've always been into, I've been in mental health working as a worker for 18 years now, so, but before I was in sales and positive, and I used to listen to podcasts. I left school at 50, no qualifications, and because I just wasn't interested in subjects in school, unfortunately, I wasn't interested. But when I'm interested in something and I'm really glued, I really like to focus on it. So what works for me is listen to podcasts, listen to films, those small chunk videos, that information, not too much, not overwhelming me with information, which is very good for people.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's why TikTok and social media has been booming in this time. I know so many people get that information, and we consume it, don't we? We just take it all in because it's so easy just to flick and get a quick 30 seconds. And I just want to ask, for the last minute, sort of, what would you like to see? Growing up, we didn't have many films on mental health. What would you like to see in the future?
Definitely, I'd love to do something. Well, I'm starting to do something on ADHD, because especially adult ADHD is definitely not recognised. It's recognised more, I should say, now. And but going back, I think it should be more films, a little shorter, and I think you hit the point early on about mental health. Some of the programs have shown, even or mentioned, TV programs, but they haven't really researched it. It's very lazy journalism sometimes as well, from other journalists. So it's people like yourselves who really understand it and listen to patients and other people, as well as your own experience and other experiences. It's vital, really, that the right information is going out to people as well.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you for the questions. Next slide, please. So next, I want to talk about Molly Vandermeer. So Molly and I have met, I think we met about 2 years ago. I think I've met everyone during the pandemic. And we actually met on the film set, and we really got on, and I wanted to work with another female filmmaker, and Molly and I decided to join forces. So Molly's a writer and director, and her bio's on the website, and she had a script that was called 12, and it was about eating disorders recovery group. And I thought, how fascinating, because we have never seen really on television what happens after you get a label of mental health, what happens after that, you know, in the recovery process. And that's what we deal with day to day, bread and butter. As a clinician, we deal with that in the community so much, and that's a big part of your life. And I thought this was absolutely fascinating, because we tend to stereotype in film eating disorders. So you see triggers and then they relapse straight away. And it's typically a teenage Caucasian ballerina. And we wanted to really pinpoint the realities of eating disorders and all the different diagnoses as well. So I'd love you to watch the trailer now.
It's nice to see some new faces here today. Welcome.
Until the pain was just so much I couldn't move.
I've relapsed again.
I was in denial for a long time.
I thought I could get better on my own. It's your first time, yeah?
And I should have pointed out there are some known actors there apart from me. There's Duncan, who you might know from the band Blue, Ali Bastian, who's been in Hollyoaks, and Leslie Ash from Men Behaving Badly. Welcome, Molly.
Hiya. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming. So I really wanted to ask you, why 12? Why did you have this script?
So I wrote the script a couple of years ago, and then it was only when Parv approached me and asked if I had any mental health scripts that I kind of dug it back out. I originally wrote it as a TV series, but then we decided to do it as a short film. So we kind of decided to do this project and picked this script because, as I'm sure many of you guys had to witness, eating disorders went up and general mental health struggles that people had during the pandemic. So we thought that this was a really important time to do it. And I feel like most people know someone in their families or their friends or themselves suffer from some form of eating disorder or disordered eating. So I thought it was such an important thing to do. And especially they go hand in hand with so many other mental health conditions like addiction and anxiety and depression, which again, all increased so much during the pandemic.
Absolutely. And you not just had me on set, you also had a forensic consultant, psychiatrist that came as well. And I wanted to ask you, as a filmmaker, obviously that you don't have a background of mental health or healthcare, how did you find that process working with the both of us?
Yeah, so it was amazing. And I really think that it should be normalised, especially when you're doing a topic like that. You should consult people that are experts in the field, because what's tended to happen in the past is most films, like I've never seen personally a good film that has portrayed eating disorders not in a sensationalist or glamorized way, or kind of stigmatizing it even more. So I think having professionals who actually work with these people every day, who suffer and see it every day, have spent years of their life working in it, researching it, is so important. It's like, Parv, I think you once said to me, you know, if you were going to write a film about horses, yeah, you would consult an equestrian, you know, but they don't do that with mental health. And they do it with, you know, doctors, but they don't do it with mental health, I think, because of the added stigma and everything. So it was really great. And Parvinder was involved from the beginning. So I had the script, but then we went and rejigged it, because obviously it was originally a pilot, and then made it into a short film. So it was really great to have a doctor who works in that field on board from the beginning, so that you were helping with the script editing. And then also practically when we were making the film, it was amazing, especially for actors and the crew. So we sent out information packs about eating disorders and mental health conditions, included with like helplines and resources for people and information. So it's really helpful for the actors to do, because, you know, actors, when they research their roles, they go away and do their research. But it was so nice for them to have someone to ask questions who sees it every day. And also it meant the crew were really aware of it. And lots of the crew came on board because they know someone who suffers with eating disorders. So it was really nice for them to learn more about it and see what's out there. And a really special thing about this film as well, which I think most of it was also because we had doctors like you working on it, was most of our cast and crew donated their fees, which is very unusual. So all of the fees that we were going to pay them, we managed to donate to eating disorder charities, which was really special.
Oh gosh, I've actually forgotten that. Yeah, that was such a lovely gesture of donation from them. And you've just reminded me, you know, we tend to forget about the crew as filmmakers, and they're so vital. I mean, I remember we did like a powwow with everyone and said, if you're triggered, please let us know. And from yourself, obviously, because you're on so many sets, what can we do more to help you guys in your well-being and mental health, do you think?
Yeah, so I think having someone on set like yourself should be normalised. I know we've spoken about this. There should be a mental health first aider on set, because when you're working in film, it's so stressful. People are tired. It's high stress environments. So mental, and especially if you're working with topics that are very sensitive, you never know what's going to happen. There's a lot of strong personalities on sets as well. So it's really important to have a doctor or professional mental health kind of person on set. And the feedback we got from the 12 set was everyone felt the most supported and safe they've ever felt. Not only did we have doctors who, you know, obviously you guys can do first aid, but also, and because we filmed during COVID as well, so that was all handled, but especially the mental health element was really important for us. So I think overall it just needs to be normalised, having someone who knows what they're doing in terms of mental health on set, and even in pre-production, just checking in on people, because there's no like HR in film sets. There's a producer you go to, but there's a lot of politics involved. So a lot of the time people aren't able, if they have an issue, to go straight to someone, and there's no one who's kind of dealing with the employees one-on-one. So I think that would be a really good step to take.
I love that you've mentioned that, because we talk about that a lot, because we always think the film industry, Hollywood, is so advanced, but it doesn't even have HR, a DBS check. Like, you can get any person coming on set, which I always find so bizarre. You know, working in the NHS, we have all these standards. And with 12, what I love that you did, you just completely normalized it. You know, it was subtle signs for the clinicians here, Russell's signs. We had, you know, in the trailer, you see someone wiping their face, and that's because they just threw up. It's all these subtleties that we have day to day. And where do you want the future of 12 to go?
Well, yeah, ideally, I'd like it to make an impact on everyone that sees it, a positive way, so that it becomes more normalised. And what we observed after screenings, it was really great, because then people were really discussing it, and not in a taboo way, because before going into the film, they weren't like, oh, let's talk about eating disorders and mental health. But then afterwards, people were having these conversations. And some people were thinking, if people like were not as sympathetic towards the issue, they came out being like, oh, I see how pervasive it is and how many elements of your life it can affect. And also raise awareness about the help groups like Eating Disorders Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, which we portray in the film. So kind of to help show what's out there for people. And hopefully we could take it further, because we only really scratched the surface of, you know, the theme, I think. So there's hopefully more to come.
And I think Molly's being very modest here. She's actually won Best Director for this film in film festivals. So I want to highlight that. And yeah, don't be modest. We want to make this a TV series on Netflix so everyone can binge it. In the last minute, I just wanted to ask you, I hope you're going to continue filmmaking, you know, with mental health professionals. Where is the future for you going to go?
So yeah, mental health is a big theme that I tend to explore. So I'm working on a documentary at the moment called El San, which is about a Syrian refugee who suffers from mental health conditions. And he's kind of a musician that's coming to terms with his queer identity. And we really want to take that forward, the ethos that I kind of learnt on 12, and bring on mental health professionals like yourself to things and consult people always, so that it's always as real and safe as possible for everyone involved.
I can't wait to see that. FYI. Thank you so much, Molly.
No worries.
We'll come back to you later.
Thanks for having me.
Next slide, please. Next, I'm going to be bringing on Juggy Sohal. Juggy, I also met about 2 years ago. He was casting for his films and I Like to Act, and we joined forces, and we've been part of quite a few features now and shorts. And this is our latest film called Core with Nina Wadia, if anyone knows who she is. She's on Netflix, The Sandman at the moment. And this has had over 30 BBC, Channel 4 and ITV interviews. Juggy co-wrote, produced the film and was an assistant director, and I've got a peep of his sort of showreel of what he does. He's worked with BBC Radio, podcast, you name it, he's done it. He's got his own production company at the moment, Flip the Script, and we're just going to watch a showreel.
To wear a turban is explored in a new short film.
One person's story.
It's mine, babe.
How can they not give it to me? Is the whole community's reality.
Now, I'm mixed and I feel it every single day.
I got called a black banana and I retaliated by saying they were the yellow lines on the road.
Welcome to It's Your Turn, the series where we will be discussing topics surrounding British Asian culture.
It is shocking what is currently happening to the Sikh farmers.
The new law means the government will stop buying grain at guaranteed prices,
resulting in the Sikh farmers' exploitation and their crops being bought very cheaply.
BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
If your creative flair is feeling a little isolated right now, why not put it to good use? This is your chance to upload your content to BBC Radio Cambridgeshire and keep the county entertained.
Thank you so much, Juggy. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Now, one thing you're a huge advocate for, which is why we joined forces, is diversity. As we can see from your showreel, it's so important and it's lacking so much in the film industry. And it's something I'm very passionate about because obviously we work in the NHS, I do, and you know, mental health doesn't discriminate wherever you're from. So I wanted to ask you, diversity, like in your films or mental health films, why is it needed?
It is incredibly important. Like when I was growing up, I always wanted to be in the film and media industry. And then I graduated uni, and that's the industry I've been in for the last 10, 11 years. But I haven't seen a change. There's been little changes, but I want to be able to see people of my skin color, stories about my culture visually, and I want to hear about it. And you only do it on special occasions. So say it's Diwali, they might do a Diwali special, or say it's, a Black Lives Matter, and there might be like a certain, surge of, representation then. But like all year round, I want to be able to, see our faces on mainstream platforms, and that has been a drive for me since I was a young kid, and it's going to continue to do until we actually see significant change.
And you've worked in the media landscape for quite a while now. You've got so much experience. Do you feel there's enough opportunities to improve diversity and inclusion?
I feel like there is opportunity, but you have to look for it. So, for example, when I wanted to be a BBC presenter for, a number of years, and the way I went about it was quite strategic. There's 39 local BBC radio stations, and I purposely only targeted the more Caucasian populated ones. So that was about 25 of them. And I emailed all of them because I wanted to be ticking that box at them stations and be the one or two diverse hires they do, because I knew that was my way in, and it worked because I worked across BBC Cambridgeshire, BBC Essex, and then when I was in the organisation, they would talk about, like I said, they would do a Diwali special, but they wouldn't have kind of Asian people talking about it, and that baffled me. So it was my job to kind of making sure we had diverse voices on air as well. So I'd done that, and then there's a Black Lives Matter special, but they didn't have no people of that color like talking about it, and that was really strange. So I had to be in the organization to help make change. So I think there is opportunity out there, but you have to look for it. And I think it is changing a little bit. There has been like kind of movement, but there's so much more to do. And that's what I want to keep doing in this industry. And stuff like the films we're creating and stuff like everyone that's been on, the stuff that we're doing is helping change that. So I think the more we talk about it and open the dialogue, I think it's important.
I love that. Talking about it, coming on to that. For you, do you find mental health is a talking point for men in your friendship circles as an ethnic man?
No, it isn't. And it's really disappointing because I'm quite an advocate of mental health and I do talk about it, but not with my guy mates. And I think being South Asian, being of Sikh faith, generally it's taboo to talk about mental health in the South Asian community. So I actually done a series with the Sikh channel back in 2018. It was called Untold British Asian Stories. And it was my third series with them, so they gave me a bit of a chance to do something a bit different, a bit bold, but there was like loads of uncertainty behind the scenes about how viewers would react. So we were covering depression, divorce, dowry abuse, and a guy actually came on and talked about depression, and it was such a mixed reaction from people. And it was really weird because for every negative comment, why is someone talking about airing their personal laundry, why is a person talking about this, but then for every like 2 or 3 like negative comments, we got like 1 positive comment going, thank you, that you talking about that has helped me. So I think it's just such a long way to go because we don't see men talking to men on screen visually. It's hard for it to be accepted because I've even struggled with it in the past. You sometimes seen as a bit weaker, maybe if you talk about mental health, or you want to put on this bravado, especially in front of the lads. And it's a stigma that it does need to be, broken. And I think it's definitely important to change the landscape with that.
And as a filmmaker, you're a director, you're a producer, you've worked on huge platforms like BBC and worked with them. How little do people talk about mental health? What do you think how can we help filmmakers or creatives talk about their mental health?
I think by actively doing stuff like we're doing, like your film with Molly and 12, you're talking about mental health, you're talking about the physical effects of it and the mental effects of it, like Daddy Blues, like making creative campaigns. Like we're doing the production company we work for, we're doing we're teaming up with Man Up charity, men's mental health charity, and we're doing a creative advert for them. And it shows a man talking to another man at the end of it. It shows the kind of rise and the fall of depression for the young male. And if we see that, it kind of normalizes it. And I think that's really, really important to keep putting stuff out there, keep talking about it, keep making sure it is okay to talk about it. It doesn't make you any less of a man, I suppose.
And also that representation, as you said, is so important. There's so much that's whitewashed and we don't see people that look like us. And I think that's so important in the film industry, as we know that the opportunity is not there. Sort of the last 2 minutes, I really want to know sort of your career. Obviously, you're so open with talking about mental health and being more inclusive on your sets. Where do you hope to go with your career?
Well, we worked on Core together, so we're the creators of Core, and it's been like incredibly successful so far. So we've really kind of big journey on that, and that's my main focus now. With Core, our aim when we sat down and strategized about this, Pavender, was that we wanted to show a story that hasn't been told. Show we're Punjabi, we have Punjabi culture, we have Sikh faith. We wanted to tell a story visually and kind of with heart about a different culture and educate like mainstream audiences. And I want to keep doing that. We're aiming to make Core into a feature film. We've got the script written. We want to take it to Hollywood and really break them boundaries. We don't just want to be in the same circle and tell it to our community, because our community knows about that story. We want to break beyond that, and that's what we're doing with Core. And it's, like I said, it's received global press attention, which shows the appetite is there for these untold stories. That's really,
my
really
last question, but be kind. How have you found working with me as a doctor? Because obviously as a doctor, I work completely differently on set.
Do you know what? I found it really refreshing because you've added that kind of security that on set, you know how to handle people emotionally. You know, before set, every time we're on a set with Pavender, she gathers everyone around and really kind of just honest, like, of what we can offer and what we can do, and that kind of adds a sense of security for everyone. So I'm really glad of your input on that, and it streams through. You know, everything you do is kind of like really measured, and it makes for a great set, and it makes a really great, safe and fun set as well, because you know you've got them procedures in place.
Oh, you're being very kind.
I know. What's going on?
Thank you so much, Juggy. And now I'd like to bring Mark and Molly to join us, and we'd like to do a Q&A. So I'm going to open up the Q&As, everybody. So please pop them in the Q&A box, and I'll have a look what we have. Okay. I'll start with Molly. How can we use film to dispel myths in mental illness so we can destigmatize conditions? And I can help you if you need it, but I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, so I'd say doing your research, making sure everyone involved in a project has kind of done their research, so you don't have someone that just has outdated views of what other kind of thing you're portraying. Also involving doctors like you, Parvinder, who are in the creative kind of sphere, to keep everyone on track and make sure you're not sensationalizing anything, and really important to make sure it's not dangerous for audiences. So I found lots of films that I've watched about eating disorders are very triggering, and they can be more harmful than, you know, more harmful than do any good, really. So I think that's really important, to make sure you surround yourself with people that will tell you if you're going down that road and give that honest feedback. But I think also trying to make sure you stay true to the message you're trying to get across in terms of the more creative side. Keep reminding yourself of that so you don't kind of stray from that path.
Mark, I'll come to you. So in films, people suffering from mental health problems are sometimes portrayed as disheveled, frightful, uncharming. How can we change that?
Yeah, well, exactly what you're doing in the films, Pavanda. I just want to say how much, I didn't realize how much work you do, honestly, just constantly on the go, honestly, gosh. But yeah, I think it goes back to the other thing. It's really normalizing the conversation. You know, that, like you said, like Molly said, really proper researching it. I think when we put things out, we got to make sure that it's not triggering like yourself, you know, so it's good to have a professional background as well. And also, when people are sharing experiences, is have the opportunity to debrief, and if they need any supervision, you know, like counselling afterwards. I think that's missing in the media as well, where a lot of people are sharing experiences. That can be harmful. But going back to your question, I think it's just I think reason why I love the film you did, Pavanda, is at the end it gives people that inspiration, and that was your point of the film. Okay, my wife especially massively went through what I went through as well, but at the end that you can come out and do something positive with your life as well. Post-traumatic growth, I call it, you know. So it's saying like, okay, it's hard, it's a big journey, but there's a positive end to it. And a lot of people I work with are most creative people who've gone with bipolar, schizophrenia, patients I work with are absolutely amazing. So we got to highlight that, you know, when people do get well, there's a career as well.
Yeah, lovely. Juggy, this is specified to you. Do you think stigma you spoke about is more prevalent in older generations than younger ones, or do you think there are other factors influencing opinions?
I think stigma is definitely against the older generation, but in a different way to the younger generation. So with the older generation, especially, you know, for Sikhs and South Asians and the kind of BAME community, it's, you know, they've a lot of, like, for my parents' generation, they come from India, so they've got like a different mentality of how they approach things, whereas my generation, I'm British South Asian, so how I approach things and how I see things is kind of a mixture of the two. So, you know, whereas I watch British TV and I want to see more South Asians on there, my parents watch purely kind of Indian shows from India, so they kind of they experience that side of things. So yeah, I would say it's for both generations, but in different ways.
Thank you. How can we be part of this? Not sure what you mean, but feel free to tweet me and I will reply to you if you'd love to be involved in any of our future films. Right, we'll go back to Molly. How have the films you've made received so far? So if we go back to 12, have you had any feedback?
Yeah, so people have been really great with feedback, and we were featured in Variety magazine, the BBC, which was great. So then we had a lot more momentum with that. All the feedback's been really interesting. People said, the film made them very emotional, but it made them really think about things. And they said that it did help them have people who didn't have much knowledge about the topic. Lots of people said it helped them understand a bit more about the language of how to discuss eating disorders. And they said they didn't realize how intersectional it is in terms of how often people with eating disorders have other conditions that kind of feed into that. So yeah, generally the feedback has been great. And yeah, we're doing the festival circuit as well, as Pav mentioned, so lots of people have seen it. So it's reached quite a wide audience, which has been great. But yeah, lots of people respond to the characters. I don't know if you can tell from the trailer, but there's lots of unique characters, and everyone has unique eating disorders within that unique condition. So even people were saying after the film, we had no idea what orthorexia was and stuff like that. So people were really educated on things they had no idea about.
Perfect. Hi, Dr. Twins. I know you. We trained together. You can easily get involved. You've got my email and I'll get you involved. Right, Mark, coming back to you. Great work. Great advocacy on films. Any plans to reach out into communities or countries where there's a lot of myths or misconceptions about mental health through film or any media?
Is that for me, Pavender?
Yeah, let's do you. Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. Sorry, can you say the question again?
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll change it slightly. Do you have any plans to reach out to other communities, about mental health in film, for example?
Myself, is it? Yeah. Doing a lot of work now with the LGBT plus Q community with dads, mums and dads. Obviously, I do a lot with the BAME community now. We're doing other stuff. I think we were just talking about the stigma around mental health in the Asian community, and I've done Nepal and different cultures. So I think this film really can educate other communities as well, like vice versa as well, sort of thing as well. So for me personally, I'm just happy the film was out, and thank you so much. Honestly, it's been it's been really and the feedback I've had off of fathers and mothers is actually the big feedback I've had is off mothers saying, oh gosh, I understand what my partner's gone through. And that's actually helped relationships as well, keeping relationships together. So a massive thank you, not just yourself, but also the crew, the actors are absolutely amazing all the time. So can't thank you enough, Pavender.
No, thank you so much. I have to say with Daddy Blues, the feedback was really overwhelming and it really moved me because, everyone did this voluntary and it just meant so much. And this is the work I want to do to make a difference. And I really felt we did. So thank you again. Juggy, this is to you. Would you ever consider making films about cultural diversity in India and its impact on the presentation of mental health problems?
Yeah, definitely. Like mental health is something I think we both expressed our interest in supporting, especially tackling it in India. I think that'd be really interesting. So yeah, that definitely would be on the table. And yeah, definitely something to think about because I think it could be really effective.
Amazing. Someone says, I'm always on the lookout for new material to host on mental health television. Well, check your screen soon. Okay. So I'm going to put this out to anyone that wants to answer it. The children teenage from BAME community go through to a lot of issues around identity, self-image, and sometimes conflict. Anything needed to help our coming generations through film? I'm just trying to think about how to... Okay, sorry, go on, Juggy.
Oh no, I was just going to say coming generation through film, so I take my niece and nephew, they're coming up, they're coming up to teens in a couple of years. And I think just representation, seeing people that do struggle through it and seeing how to cope with it, that would be really good, short form little pieces, whether that's a short film or a podcast that we mentioned earlier or anything that's accessible to them, seeing that and seeing how they can deal with it and normalizing it, that would be just a really good way for them to kind of come up and see that, whereas when we were growing up, that wasn't quite there. So.
Amazing. Someone's asked me, Yeah, so about Hollywood. So film industry is a bit odd. It is all Hollywood. So I've worked with Channel 4, BBC Sky, ITV, etc., etc. I feel very awkward talking about myself on a webinar, but yes, and I do use professional actors. I've trained with an acting school, but I also like to get people involved. So I ask a lot of the consultants I work with actually if they would like to be involved on set. And the film I made last year with the patients, I mean, it was amazing. You know, some of the patients had been there for 20 years and they said this has been the best day of my inpatient stay. So there's a lot of work we can be doing. Perfect. Next one. Right, who would like to answer this? Hi, the current media and film industry show mental illness in dramatic and distorted picture. Can we change this to a more realistic way to attract the public to talk about it? Most likely requires a lot of funding. How can this be achieved? Maybe Molly.
Yeah, so I think just portraying these issues and people in a realistic way, and as we said, not sensationalized or stigmatized. So I think if lots of independent film is doing it, but sometimes it doesn't tell as good a story that wider audiences, you know, want to see the dramatic life kind of someone. So I think just educating people, even, you know, like, I don't know if there's much of doctors going in to talk to people in the industries about mental health and how dangerous it is to portray it in such a negative way. So I think if there's more of a discussion about that kind of from the top down, it would filter through, and then all the things that start getting made will be more realistic and true to what's going on in the world.
Perfect. We have a comment here. Film is a very strong media to destigmatize mental health. Are you considering wider topics like mental health and trauma, PTSD, dementia? I'm not sure who that's to, but I certainly am. I know Molly is. I know all of us here. We have got lots of different more scripts we want and different projects. I'd love to make more film. It just comes to funding, as you'll find out in Hollywood. Is there any chance we can get involved in short films, like discuss issues with the BAME community? I think, Juggy, I'll go back to you for that.
Sorry, what? Can you repeat that?
So any chance to get involved in short films discussing sort of BAME community issues?
Yeah, of course. There's so much like opportunity to do stuff like that now. It's just teaming up with fellow kind of creatives and reaching out and just making friends and just seeing what ideas you come up with together. And there's a lot of people that want to grow in the film industry, so they, you know, willing to do stuff for experience. So I think there's a lot of topics to cover and a lot of ways to do it.
Mark, I'm going to come to you. This question's made me laugh because I completely kind of agree. Does anyone have examples, but ask Mark, of psychiatrists in media that are positive and not evil? Because this happens a lot. The shrinks on TV are always the evil murderer. So Mark, I can't think of anyone, but can you think of anyone that is a good shrink?
Oh, I had a good shrink when I got diagnosed with ADHD. So he listened and understood, you know, it took 2.5 hours to listen to me rather than 10-minute assessment. So that was good. But no. I think, like I said, you know, working with parents, you know, it's normalizing. It's not just the couch. You go to the couch, you know, there's loads of different therapies, art therapy. There's loads of different person-centered approach. So, you know, it's normalizing that what works for you might not work for other people. And that can be done through film as well. And I think talking could be walk and talk groups, you know, those sort of sessions with psychiatrists, walk and talk. I don't know if I've answered that question, but what I will say before I shut up as well is I think what can better people's mental health as well is actually film, creativeness, poetry, and knowing about neurodiversity more now. That certainly helped my own mental health as well. You know, and so there's a lot of room there. I've seen him work in hospitals, you know, how it can benefit music therapy, art therapy, those sorts of things as well. And I think film, we need to encourage more people to get into film and give them the opportunities. And you guys could do the workshops for those people as well.
I was just going to say, sorry, quickly, that I just finished this show yesterday, The Patient on Disney Plus. Steve Carell's character, he's a psychiatrist and he's portrayed really well. He's well developed.
So watch that. Yeah. We're a rare breed on media of good people. Juggy, I'll come back to you. So someone's interested, I think it's a doctor of media, I guess film, and they're interested in, you know, exploring that as a hobby or a bit more. What advice would you give to anyone interested in film?
I would just go out and do it. Like that's how we all started in film. And I think you know, Pavender and I, when we connected, it was kind of like, okay, we self-funded our own short films and kind of got it out there and got the experience we needed, and then it's kind of grown on from there. So just connect with people, fellow filmmakers and fellow creatives, figure out what you want to do, and just go showcase your work. And it's all building. The first film compared to Core, which is now it's the growth is amazing.
Amazing. Someone, I think for me, is there any sort of detrimental reputation costs associated with the medics foray into the film industry? So I see them as separate entities, separate careers. I am very honest and authentic in my mental health work. So there is no detriment, because I make films that I would personally watch or I would recommend for patients, and I never say anything in a film that I wouldn't in real life in the NHS. I'm not fantasizing mental health, and I'm very careful what I put on social media, obviously for my own privacy and confidentiality. You know, I started doing this when I worked in forensics, so you have to protect yourself also safety wise. But there's no detriment, I think, as long as you're working honestly, just as you would speak in a clinic. Okay, we have a few more minutes. I'll try and get 2 more questions in. Let's see, which one shall I pick? Mark, I'll go with you. I think this one will be interesting. Have you been involved in any medical school curriculums?
As in like research and stuff, things?
I guess it could be anything, but I'm assuming they mean...
Oh, right. Well, obviously I've done like 2 academic books now, work with doctor. That means, is that what you mean?
It could be, yeah. So
yeah,
you know,
oh yeah. Well, I'm mostly like, obviously I've set up projects within the NHS and other projects. I think that's one thing. I get bored easy and I move on to things. So I've done a lot of things people not aware of. But yeah, I think from my personal experience working with professionals, that's helped me, and that's very important. And also, lived experience is so powerful as well. But working with professionals as well, and because we got to be aware that sometimes sharing my experience might be different to others' experiences as well. It's very important.
And in case that was to me, I'm doing a CBD module with the Royal College, actually. Molly, I'll come to you because you will know the answer to this. Is there any law to protect mental health film industry from triggered movies?
In terms of what? In terms of,
I guess in any way, but there's no law, is there? There's no law to protect. I think it just means, is there any, I think they're writing more to it, but there's no law to protect anyone, is there, in the industry about mental health if you're triggered? No. So I guess going on to that with you, Molly, how do you try to safety net anyone that watches your content?
I always do content warnings. And then also, if we're doing a screening, I'll say this contains, some stuff that viewers may find upsetting or triggering. In terms of when we're working, Parv and I, as she said at the beginning, did a little chat to say, if anyone's having any issues, come to mental health first aider, one of the doctors, and feel free to step out, because some of the content is quite hard hitting. With anything like that, with racism as well and stuff on all sets, I make sure that everyone knows that they can have their space and feel heard and listened to. So I'd say protecting people working on the project, the cast as well, because it's really hard for actors to get into that headspace. It takes a lot for them. And then also content warnings.
Perfect. I'm aware of the time, so I think we'll have to stop the Q&As there. There's so many. Thank you so much. I just want to thank Mark, Molly, Juggy. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you guys are so busy taking over Hollywood, and I really appreciate it. I just want to remind the attendees that you'll receive a certificate in the next week for the conference, and please do fill in the feedback form that will be in the chat box very soon. Please watch out for these amazing creatives. I'm not just saying this, they are the future of Hollywood and Waterstones. I'm looking at you, Mark. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Pavender, putting on, and the Royal College as well, and you guys, Polly. Brilliant. Honestly, love what you're doing as well. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. It was great.
Thank you, and great job, Pavender.
Great job, you guys.
Lovely host.
Thank you.